It's this simple. We're removing the need from motivation by using science to create an unbreakable running habit for life. 50% of all of our daily actions are habits that require no motivation, and all habits, good or bad, are formed in the same way, a 4-step process. And if you follow the steps, you can make pretty much anything a habit, like running. Wouldn't you want to be in a place where going running required zero motivation ever? You just did it. It's easier than you think, and eventually you won't need to think at all. You'll just run.
And this is where I want to get you, out here, running, happy, trapped in the best habit you could possibly get trapped in, which is exercise. And really it's about the identity that you create for yourself and the processes that you put in place to make that happen. It's science, baby. Got very little to do with motivation. So the first thing that you absolutely must do is call yourself a runner. You need to identify as a runner. It doesn't matter if you've only run for 30 seconds or you've run ultra marathons. Running's a lifestyle. It's a way of life. It's not some arbitrary distance that you have to run to qualify to be one. It is the single biggest shift you can make in your running journey. Changing that mindset from I want to be able to run a marathon to I am a runner. I need to stop to tell you why this bit is important, because runners run. They do whatever they can to make running happen, whereas people training for a marathon or training for a race, they dip out and skip sessions when motivation is low. Can you see the difference? And once you've locked down the identity, it's time to start the process using science and not motivation to form that lifelong running habit. And the really good news is every single habit follows the same 4-step process: noticing, wanting, doing, and liking. So now I'm gonna give you the most practical examples I have for every single step of the way so that you make running the most unbreakable habit that you've ever had. And it starts with this.
And the first step of a habit loop is something we call noticing, and it's a cue, and it could be visual and it could be physical, but it's what starts the process. Remember, everything we do in the early days of forming our habits has to be simple and it has to be obvious. Essentially, we're aiming to remove the "I wonder if I'll feel like running today" from the equation entirely. It isn't about motivation, it's about creating processes. So how do we do it? The first is something I actually do now completely subconsciously, but it's called an implementation intention. And a study in the British Journal of Health Psychology found that 91% of people who planned their intention to exercise by writing down when and where they were going to exercise each week followed through. 91%. And that is nothing to do with motivation. It's intention. It's as simple as saying, I'm going to run this amount on X day at Y time in Z place. And that is the bit that I do now subconsciously. I always just think a day or two ahead and I think I'm going to go out for a run at this time, going to run this distance in this place. But I did start with implementation intentions in the early days. And the other way to notice and get started is by optimizing your environment. A simple look around our house is going to show you everything is geared around our identity as runners, from having a treadmill to our trainer storage and a trophy cabinet, which are, let's be fair, Mary's more than mine. And our environment is also crafting around making running easy and obvious. We've got separate storage for all running clothes for ease of access. Our trainers are in an obvious place and they're easy to get. And we know where all of our training gear is. Even the alarm we use in the morning is optimized to running because we've chosen an old budget wristwatch that doesn't even have the option to press snooze if we would want to. We're optimizing our environment to remove motivation from the process, stop leaving it to chance, and that's going to lead us to the next step. And step 2 of the habit forming process is wanting. And the aim for step 2 of the habit loop is to change the way that we view all of this running stuff. We want to try and move our mindset from I have to run now to I get to run now, or I want to run now. So we've got to make the action appealing and attractive, and we can do that in a few ways. One thing I like to do is attach the habit I want, in this case it's running, to a firmly established and positive habit that I already have, like having a coffee in the morning, and a process called temptation bundling. So you need to think about the good habits you already have, and once again, you've got to craft your environment to fit. Another example for us is breakfast. We always dreamed of living in a country where we could have breakfast outside in the mornings. And now that's possible, so we attach a morning run to the prospect of a nice rewarding breakfast and coffee. And once in a while we'll reward with something like a pain au chocolat, but in general we'll try to steer clear of regularly bundling with unhealthy habits like chocolate or ice cream, as much as I would want to. The other really important way that we make our running appealing and attractive is we make it our life. You'll have seen in multiple videos that we've got a crew of friends that we train and race with, and it excites us, but it also holds us accountable. I want to be surrounded by like-minded people like John and Mikey, and we want them to push us to crazy new levels. John has done 6 different 100-mile races, and Mikey's done over 10 Ironman races. And even when we don't train together in person, we're training together towards shared goals. And none of us want to let the other one down, and it's crazy powerful accountability. They say your vibe attracts your tribe, and if you don't have these kinds of friends yet, then join a running club, or even a Facebook group where people organise these meetups, or just grab a friend or your partner and rope them in. When you're feeling tired, you need that person that's not going to let you off the hook, that's going to breathe new life into you. And when they're tired, you need to be that person for them. The system works, and you'll forget about having to run now. By making it attractive and appealing, you'll want to run, which takes us to step 3. And that brings us to the third step in the habit process, and actually the one that I think that most people get wrong, and that is the actual doing. It's the response. And in the early days and even down the line, it has to be easy. And this is where so many newer runners and some existing runners do really fall down, because we're aiming to change our focus from the habit of running to the habit of showing up to exercise, to create the space in our lives for it to be a thing. Because once you've built the habit of exercise, you can find thousands of ways to improve. Without the habit, every strategy is useless. With habits, the way to make them easy is to reduce the friction, which is basically anything that makes it harder to carry out that action. So you start small, even micro in the early days. The habit could literally be showing up at the time that you've decided with your trainers on, ready to go. That's the habit. Whether you then run or not is actually irrelevant. I mean, 9 times out of 10 you are going to go for a run, but you don't have to. This again removes most motivation from the equation. And when this micro habit is your victory, you're almost always going to achieve it, and you can build from there. In James Clear's awesome book Atomic Habits, he talks about a client who for the first 1 to 2 months set a rule that he wasn't allowed to spend more than 5 minutes in the gym. But he had to go every day, so he was focusing on not missing the workout, turning up for the workout rather than the workout itself. He wasn't even allowed to stay there for 6 minutes. And now way down the line he's over 100 pounds in weight lighter, and he focused on the habit of going to the gym first and focused on the results later. And that's really, in the early days, how we need to do this with running. Think about things like limiting yourself to 5 to 10 minutes of running, and easy running as well, which is the other biggest mistake that I see runners make. The thing is, people start to dread and begrudge runs when they are hard every time. So just run them easy and enjoyable and focus on finding the joy. And when we talk about making it easy and reducing friction, we come back to your environment, and that is key again. You have to optimize it. Before almost all runs, we're going to put out all of the kit that we need ready, especially if it's an early morning run. We do it the night before. Shoes by the door, no decisions to be made. And as I said before, even our alarm clock has no snooze button. It is optimized for our running environment. Everything crafted to make the run happen. And that's because it's easy. There's no motivation or thought required. Same with coming home after work. The simple rules are: don't sit down, have the kit out and obvious. It's an easy process, and we're out of the door. Oh, and it's the same in reverse. You have to add friction. Why do you think there is no chocolate in my house? But it does lead us to step 4 of the process. And step 4, which is the final step in the process, is the part where you need to make yourself want to do it all over again. And that is liking. It's the reward. And the real trick to this when it comes to exercise is understanding and knowing that the physical payoff is down the line, it's not immediate, it's long term. So we almost have to hack the process by building in immediate rewards in the early days. Part one of this process is tracking and recording your workouts somehow. And there are so many apps that you can find that can achieve this, from Strava to Garmin to Connect Stats, and even if you're on Training Peaks, it has a really cool function of turning the workouts that you've completed green so you can see the ones that you achieved. But if you want more physical, then Matt Diavella has actual calendars and pens that he strategically places around his house to make it easy to tick. And ticking a completed habit soon becomes a habit in itself. It's keeping a chain going, it's not missing a workout, but it's also, on the other side of it, knowing that it's okay if you do miss a workout. The trick is, just don't miss 2 in a row, start a new chain. You're essentially rewarding yourself, teaching yourself to like it by ticking or crossing or recording in some way all the workouts that you've done. And that is actually a very powerful tool to keep you at it. But sometimes I need more. I love tracking my progress, but I need something tangible as a reward. And something that works a treat in the same way that we temptation bundle, we use that temptation as a reward too. So the coffee or the nice breakfast, the very occasional treat. Now this is going to sound weird, but even using a massage gun as a reward after a workout works for me. You do the hard work, you're allowed to treat it. Back in the UK during the winter, before we would go out for a run, we would run ourselves a hot bath so that we knew by the time we got back we could reward ourselves with a relax and a soak in the bath. It's the ultimate relaxation to come home to. And on a much more macro front, if I've had a really good training block or even a really good season, then I'm going to jump on the internet and I'm going to look for races or experiences that I can go to and do to reward myself for all of the hard work that I've put in. And it makes me want to jump straight back into the process at step one and do it all over again.
So what should be completely and utterly clear by now is that everything in my life, my environment, my identity, everything is crafted around me being a runner, enhancing my ability to run. Motivation plays very little part in all of this. In fact, I often joke with people that ask me and say that I am just trapped in a habit, but luckily it's about the most healthy habit you can be trapped in, but that's how I feel. It's basically habit and discipline, but not even the discipline of running, it's the discipline of crafting your environment to allow you to turn up to run and exercise. Just look at when I got hit by a car in 2019. Turning up to exercise was such a habit that it actually didn't matter what exercise at that point that it was that I did. It didn't even matter how long. The point was I kept my mindset and environment set up to make exercise happen, regardless of the day or week I was having. No motivation needed. So the next time you think you can't go for a run because you don't have the motivation, just remember this: the science says otherwise. You actually just need to set in place the processes to make it obvious, attractive, easy and rewarding. And in next to no time, you're not going to know how not to exercise. But it starts with you and your identity. And if you make that a priority, then you're going to start making decisions that runners make. It's science. There's no chance here. You've just got to want it. So do you?
And if you found some value in this video, then consider subscribing to the channel, but never any hard sell. And I think you might also find some value in this video, which is some easy to implement daily dietary habits that can take your running to the next level. And by the time you've watched this video, Mary and I will have run the Bangkok Marathon, so those videos coming very soon. We'll see you next week.